Hi guys. Hey, I'm here from the Operations and Logistics Team, and I'm making this video to give an overview of some of the discussion we've had on grading and reporting grades and a student's current standing in their class, how to report it using Synergy. So before I start, I want to give a public service announcement on keeping your laptop safe. Last night, just like in this picture, I had a spill, but unlike this picture, it may have been this beverage, which had a little bit more sugar and was a little bit harder to clean up than iced tea. And this laptop no longer turns on. I got it all over the keyboard, and as of this morning, I think it is a paperweight. So I know Darcy had an accident with her Mac. And so just a reminder, we have to get through distance learning, so keep your laptop safe for the next 6 weeks. Um, Let me go back to the 360. I'll go to the bottom. There's some information put together. Uh, the goals for grading in this document, basically we just need a system where we can determine if a student will receive a pass or an incomplete by the end of the semester. We need to be able to communicate the current status of all of our students to their parents and to the student. And so hopefully we're going to be using Synergy to do that. We need to communicate that 60 to 100% is equivalent to a pass, and an incomplete is any overall course percentage below a 60%. I think there's some confusion that students, they didn't know if they're passing or incomplete. They don't know how good they're doing, and if they knew that percentages kind of lined up with a pass and an incomplete, then it might be a little more straightforward. So, or they might not be as stressed out about it. 60% is a fairly low bar, so if they know that they need to get above a 60, hopefully they can do that. Although some will be like, they're going to do the minimum amount of effort to keep their grade above a 60, but that it is what it is. So, and then hopefully we're going to use this document to provide guidance on how you can report grades and status. So, I want to keep this video relatively short, so you may need to pull it up, but I put together 3 examples of how you could run your gradebook in Synergy, and I'll show mine and give you some information on how to set up categories. But 3 ways you could run it. Way 1, you could run your gradebook as is, changing nothing, keeping category weights the same, and going for it, and then just entering grades for distance learning as we go. And many of you guys will probably use that method. There are some pros and cons. The big con, if they had a failing grade prior to distance learning and are doing distance learning, their grade might climb slowly. Okay, the way you can make grades climb faster and more responsive to distance learning, there's 2 methods. One, you could create a weighting category and then enter multiple distance learning grades, meaning, like, say, I think some teachers will be doing weekly grades, like week 1, week 2, week 3, and just entering a distance learning grade, but maybe it's categorized as distance learning and weighted at 50%. And these percentages for weighting we're not mandate, there's no mandate or anything, but we just want to give some ideas on how you could do it. So maybe you weight 50% pre-closure and 50% post-closure, and you enter weekly grades, okay? And if a student is active, maybe they earn full credit for that week. And if they're not active, maybe depending on how active they are, maybe they logged in and they responded to some questions but didn't turn in an assignment, maybe you could give them 50%. And if they're not active, missing, then give them a 0. Again, if it's a low grade, they can come back the next week and make things up. You could also go back to previous weeks and change their grade or change that assignment grade as they turn it in, because there's no real late work right now. So the big con, if there's students who are not active and their grade is now weighted at 50%, they're gonna drop and they might show as, say, below 60%. But again, once they fix it, they'll be back up. Okay. And then here's another option. Instead of entering multiple grades, like a grade for each assignment that you do in your class, maybe you just set up a category called distance learning in Synergy, and you create a single assignment. And that single assignment is just called distance learning status, or some kind of status grade. And you basically, as long as they're active, you keep that grade at 100%. And if they're not meeting expectations, then you lower that grade accordingly. So 50 points or 0 points, whatever you feel is representative of where they're at. This will give an immediate jump for the students who, say, had an F before we closed. And now, since 50% of their grade is this status grade, if they're active the first week and they get on it, then they'll be at a passing grade right away. The grade's going to respond really quickly. So if a student doesn't do anything for a couple weeks, you could set it at their status grade low. That's going to bring their overall grade low. And then if they get back in it, you just raise that status grade. So the problem is, if you have a single status grade and you're just overriding it, you lose the historical tracking of it. I don't know if that's going to be important. So I'll show you my grade book and how I set it up. So this is my physical science class. I kind of did a modified, or like a mashup of those two weighted ones. So first of all, for those of you who don't know how to make a new category, if you want to, say, have a distance learning category, you can go to Gradebook Setup. And to create a new category, you go to Assignment Types, the tab at the top, and then I've created one. You can hit New and do it. I created one called Distance Learning, okay, and I also created one called Past Distance Learning. Okay, and then if I go back to my gradebook setup, this is for my first period physical science class. So I did all my physical science classes like this. What I did is I took my distance learning category and I'm weighting it 50%. And then I took all my past categories, like my activities used to be worth 20%, now they're worth 10. My labs were worth 30%, now they're worth 15. So I cut all my old categories in half. Okay, and this past distance learning, it's there, but what I've done is I've set that weight to 0. So this is going to be the way that I track like historical progress, which might be overkill, but in my mind, this is how I could do it. And it's not going to be a ton of extra work. So you hit update once you get your weighting right, and then you go to your gradebook. So here's how I did it. Week 1. When it was week 1, I had that under distance learning category, and any student who logged in and did, it was a fairly short assignment, and even if it was incomplete, like not done correctly, I still gave them 100 points for that week 1 grade. So Cameron Waite, who I just talked to Corey Young about because he was on his advocate list. Cameron is working on the assignments, and he's going to get me week 1 and week 2. He just hasn't been active in my class. But anyways, I gave him 0 and 0, and I noted in the comment, let's see. I noted in the comment, Cameron Waite. Oh, my comment is not there. So I should just note, not active in Google Classroom. Talked to advocate. Okay, and then I can save it. Oh, and that was week 2. That's probably why I hadn't added any comments in. So you can notice in week 2 I kind of started to tune things a little more. Maybe I shouldn't be sharing student names, but their students are all passing except for Cameron and Trinity. Trinity, she was active and turned everything in first week, and I just checked a few minutes ago, she still hasn't turned in her week 2 stuff. As soon as she does turn that in, I'm going to change this to 100, or actually this probably won't even matter, because week 3, let me show you how I'm going to do week 3 and explain this. If I go in and I click new assignment and I set up a new assignment called week 3, and I set it up as my distance learning. Week 3 runs the 27th through the 1st. I put it in as another 100-point assignment. Could add it to my classes. I'm doing this in chemistry and physical science. My AP Chem class had a bunch of seniors in it, so I'm grading that one different. So Let me save this. And what I'm going to do, since week 3 is the current week, this will be like next week, I would go in and I would edit my week 2 assignment, and I'm just going to change it to that category that was not weighted, so called past distance learning. Again, this might be overkill, but it gives me like a historical record. So in the case, let's just go through really fast. Ellie's active, still, active, active, etc. So they're doing things, and again, I'm just cross-referencing what they're doing, in Google Classroom, so I can see who's turned in what here. And I'm not gonna transfer these grades over to Synergy. I'm just giving them a status grade. So even if Ellie, like, I did give her some feedback, and I put a 90%, even though I put a 90% there, I'm giving her status grade 100% in Google Classroom. So let's say active, I'm just gonna go through. I know if I enter their grades, I could fill them down if I go into the specific assignment. Oops. Let's see if my copy and paste works. Oh, my copy and paste is not working. So, okay, I'm not gonna do all the students, but let's say I get to Trinity. Trinity, because she was inactive week 2, but let's say she just brings it back and she's there, she's doing stuff, then her grade is now above the passing mark. So that 50% doesn't hurt her because it's in this unweighted category. So basically, I'm trying to keep the current week. That one's counting as 50% of their grade. The grade out weeks, those are counting as no percent of their grade. They're just historical. And then all this other stuff, that was my old grading categories: tests, activities, quizzes, labs. That was all from prior to closure, and all those together add up to 50% of their grade. So, each week I got to go in once a week, look at their Google Classroom. So I focus on Google Classroom Monday through Friday, and then like Saturday, I go in and I'm going to enter in their status grade. So I got to update Synergy once a week. I'll just let my students know that that's going to be my protocol. And then hopefully this spurs them along, because they're going to see in their parent view. So let's see if I can do that. We'll look at Ellie. So my hope and the team's hope is just like they would before when they check their grades. They would come in, and when they go to the grade book, they just need to start thinking anything above a 60% is going to translate to a P. So like Ellie would say, oh, okay, I'm above 60% everywhere. And then the students who are below a 60%, then that will ultimately translate to a I, which would then have a, what do they call it, credit assurance kind of contract with it. So that's how I'm doing mine. There's probably much better ways to do it. So if you guys have something clever in the grade book, let us know, and we'll add it to that table in our 360. Otherwise, if you have any questions, let us know, and I'll talk to you guys later.